Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing the 2019 to present redesigned latest generation Rolex Oyster Perpetual Yacht-Master. This is the 126621 in 904L stainless steel and Everose red gold. The watch measures 40 millimeters in diameter, 11.6 millimeters thick. From lug tip to lug tip, it is 47.3 millimeters, and from end link to end link, the total distance across the wrist is 50 millimeters with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. When I throw this watch on my wrist, you can see that it wears nicely. It's much flatter than a sub, even though the aesthetic is similar. It is a thinner watch. It's also relatively short across the wrist, especially when you're just considering the lugs of the case. It's a watch that you could wear on a wrist of 13.5 centimeters circumference in spite of the 50 millimeter end link to end link dimension because of the way the case curves down at its edge. The watch is nicely counterweighted by the bracelet. It does feel weightier than a pure steel watch, and Rolex steel watches are weighty enough by themselves. You could see that the watch would easily slide underneath the cuff, so if you want to use it for formal attire, no problem there. It is 100 meters water resistant, shock resistant, and anti-magnetic, so it's very much a sports watch as well. Taking a look at the bracelet, you can see it has a conforming end link to better integrate the bracelet with the case. And then it is the 3-link Oyster sports watch bracelet design. There's a little bit of a taper as we move away from the lugs. The outer faces are polished. The center links, which are Everose, are polished. The shoulder links are satinated. And you can see that removable links are fixed by screws. Now, Rolex makes its own cases and its own clasps and its own bracelets. It has its own foundry, it smelts its own gold, and it makes its own steel. The steel is 904L, a special Rolex steel, used by some others, but mostly just by Rolex in the industry. It's more resistant to corrosion, especially in the presence of salt, so you don't need to rinse it after exposure to salt. Everose is different from most rose golds in that it's redder thanks to more copper, and it's more resistant to fading thanks to a higher platinum content. We have an Oyster clasp here, and this is the same high degree of security you get with something like a Submariner or a Sea Dweller. You get two locks. There's the clamshell lock, note that little curve to dig your nail in, and then there is a spring-loaded lift lock system. You can see how there's a beak and a hook internally, and there's a spring-loaded latch that you need to release. It's not simply a friction fit system. This is actually quite secure, but you need to lift and unlock, so it is double locked. Internally, we have the EasyLink 5mm tool-free adjustment system. It's the equivalent of adding or removing one sizable link. We have several divots drilled inside the clasp, and I'll do my best to show this to you here. But you can see internally within the clasp, there are 3 divots. There are even little tracks slating down into them, allowing you to use your strap tool to change the anchoring point of the bracelet inside the clasp. The case is anything but what you see on a sub or a Sea Dweller. While this is an aquatic sports watch, it has a gracefully curved case. It's not the super case. The lugs are tapered. The case has beautiful fluid compound curves on its side, and you can see the light dancing across it like flame. We have a set of crown guards flanking a triplock crown, and you can tell it's a triplock crown in steel because it has 3 symmetrical dots. Screw down crown, 100 meters of water resistance. The whole bezel is made of gold, so it's not just an insert on steel. This is a true gold bezel. You can see it's a combination of media blasted and raised and relieved with polish. We have a sharp knurling that makes it easy to grip. It is a bidirectional bezel that is designed to be used to count down to the start of a match, which is one race within a regatta or a nautical racing competition comprising multiple matches. As you can see, it's a bidirectional bezel, so it's used for timing, but it's not a dive bezel. We have on the dial a brown bronze metallic sunburst. We have gilt style rose printing for the Rolex logo. Then we have white on brown printing for the remainder, with the exception of Yacht-Master, which is red on brown. Cyclops eye magnifier. We have large indices featuring the signature Rolex Chromolite Blue Lume. It is their own luminescent material. They make it themselves. The hands as well as the indices are rose gold to match the color of the dial, the bezel, and also to resist oxidation over time, as gold does not tarnish. We have a couple of subsidiary setting modes, one of which is the hacking seconds function. So I can actually stop the time. Generally, it's best to stop the hand when it's at 60, and I can set it to a reference time. I also have a quick set system for the date. Turn it all over. Underneath this case back, Rolex caliber 3235. Automatic winding with a 70-hour power reserve. It's the latest generation Rolex in-house automatic movement. It has a 4 Hz beat rate, or 8 beats per second, pivots on 31 joules. It's chronometer certified, but Rolex then takes the chronometer certified movement, cases it up, tests it in 6 positions, and it tests that from the factory it will run no worse than +2, -2 seconds per day. That is the basis for that term superlative chronometer. The watch has a free sprung balance and a full balance bridge for shock tolerance. Compared to previous Rolex automatic movements, this one features a winding rotor bearing rather than jeweled staff to make it more shock tolerant. The watch uses an overcoil hairspring, so no matter what position it is, the hairspring breathes concentrically. Any position on your wrist or dresser at night, the watch will keep even time, and that hairspring is made of an anti-magnetic blue oxidized niobium zirconium alloy. Rolex even makes the lubricants and the shock protection used in this movement. Fully integrated manufacturer. Reach out to Tim Mosso at Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing.